Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This one we are lineup building for week 8 of the NFL season on Draftkings. This is more geared towards cash games / single entry GPPs. But before we continue, if you could leave a like and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPinell16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheets I build every single week in my Slack chat, links available in the description below for my Patreon. And anyway, I say we get right to it. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm having kind of some trouble this week trying to figure out my exact roster construction I want. Because I want guys like Hopkins, I want guys like Deshaun Watson, I want Carson, I want Fournette, these kind of guys, the studs. But I run out of salary quick, and I also feel like I'm stacking. I don't like to do that in cash games, but I'm seeing so much ownership on these Texans receivers and Deshaun Watson. I don't want to miss out on that in cash games because I think they're going to go nuts. And if they go nuts and I don't have them in cash, I'm dead. So I feel like I'm forced to pay up for them. But, we're going to see. So we're going to go through the initial roster construction first. Now, I'm not just saying to go plug this lineup into all of your contests. This is just an initial roster construction lineup video thing just to get a feel of where I'm heading towards for cash games and see my process of this and my reasoning. And then we can make some pivots at the end of this video that I think, could be reasonable. So we're going to start off with paying up a quarterback, and it's going to be Deshaun Watson at 7,100. So earlier on in the week, I was really high on Russell Wilson, and I still am. I think he's going to be a fantastic play, but I like Chris Carson a lot. And if in cash games, I probably don't want to play the quarterback-running back combo, especially because Carson's not a huge pass catcher. I mean, he is involved in the passing game a little bit, but it's just not the best correlation play. So I like Deshaun Watson a lot at 7,100. The Texans have a very high team total of 28.5, and Oakland's secondary got absolutely toasted last week by guys like, MVS, Allison, Graham, not good people. And we got some pretty good players on the Texans. DeAndre Hopkins, Kenny Stills isn't bad, and Kiki Cutie's not terrible either. And Deshaun Watson obviously is an elite fantasy quarterback. Oakland does 26 DVOA versus the pass, and they're allowing 24.6 points per game to quarterbacks this season, which is actually third most in the entire league. And the Texans, they actually have a good offensive line versus defensive line pass blocking matchup this week. Is something you don't expect a lot from the Texans. It's actually the 6th best pass blocking matchup of the week, so we should have time to throw, sit back, relax, throw some bombs to Hopkins and Stills, hopefully. And unfortunately, though, he did lose his deep threat in Will Fuller, obviously, because everyone knows that by now, which is going to was why Kenny Stills is a really popular play this week. But he should be fine. His receivers should step up. And he was just fine last week without him. He still had 20 points. Obviously, that's not great. But this is a great matchup versus Oakland, so he should be fine. Oakland's allowing over 306 passing yards over 300 yards passing per game and 2.6 touchdowns per game, which is third most in the league. And plus, with Deshaun Watson, we get amazing rushing upside. He has 5 rushing touchdowns on the season. If you get a nice floor with the rushing base that he offers us, and that turns into a high ceiling as well, because if he gets the rushing touchdowns and the passing touchdowns, we are in for a good game. And even if he doesn't do anything on the ground, if you look at his game versus Atlanta, he had 5 passing touchdowns, really didn't do anything on the ground, and he still had 44 fantasy points. So either way, I think he's going to be fine. It's just nice to know that you have that rushing floor as well. So Deshaun Watson, he's someone I'm liking to get in. I think he's going to be very high owned, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be the highest owned quarterback on the slate. And as for our running backs, I'm keyed in on 2 running backs this week and also a third one, which I'll plug in later. But I like Leonard Fournette a lot. So he is at 7,800, and it's just pretty much volume. I say this in almost every single video, and I think Leonard Fournette has been on every single one of my videos for a while now, maybe the last month maybe. But it's just he's getting so much work, and in cash games, we want guys with high floors and high ceilings, and that's what Fournette's going to offer us. He's been one of the safer plays each week, scoring double-digit points in 7 out of 7 weeks so far. He also has ceiling games in the mid to upper 20s, and like I said, he's always in the double digits. So Leonard Fournette, he makes a ton of sense for me. He's averaging 26 touches per game, which is second only behind CMC, so the usage has been elite for him. And the Jets are also giving up 29.1 points per game to running backs, which is 5th most in the NFL. And another thing I like out of my running backs, especially in cash games, he's a 6-point favorite at home, which is great correlation because, if they get a big lead, they're just going to lean on Fournette. Maybe Fournette gets near 30 touches. He's averaging 26, so 30 touches is not out of the question here, even though it sounds outlandish. And also, he's involved in the passing game, so I really don't care about game spread. I mean, look, 2 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, 3 targets, 8 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets. He's been great this year, and we're just going to plug him in on cash games. I know he's a little bit more expensive than he has been. He's 7,800, but the amount of work he's going to get, 30-plus touch upside, I will take it. And the Jets' defense isn't that scary. So Leonard Fournette, I like him. Home favorite. Great talent. Gets all the touches. Then the next running back I want to lock in this week is Chris Carson versus Atlanta at 7K. So earlier on in the week, I was a lot heavier on the passing game. I'm kind of shifting towards the run game now. But again, I think they're both going to be fine. And it's kind of just the Matt Ryan thing that's scaring me off the passing game for the Seahawks. I do think they can get an early lead if Matt Ryan ends up not playing. But again, same thing as I said with Fournette. We're getting a whole bunch of volume here. He's getting 23.5 touches per game, which is elite usage. That's fourth most in the NFL. And he's also involved in the passing game, not nearly as much as Leonard Fournette, but he's still getting nearly 4 targets per game, like more like 3.5, but still. It's nice to see. Seahawks have one of the highest totals on the slate and are 5.5-point favorites, which actually I think... No, actually, I think they're 6... There might be 7-point favorites now, I think. 6 or 7, so... Vegas is kind of factoring the Matt Ryan thing, but again, I like that my running backs are favorites. Now, he's not a home favorite, but still, it's nice to see that he's a favorite. And like I said, if Matt Ryan is out, I'm going to be even more heavier on Chris Carson because I think the Seahawks could potentially get a really big lead, and they just, Carson gets near 30 touches. And if you look at Atlanta's numbers versus running backs this season, it doesn't look like a great matchup, but it's just because of how easy it is to pass on them. So teams just pass on them. But still, running backs have had some pretty good games versus them this season. Dalvin Cook, week 1, absolutely smashed them. Derrick Henry had a pretty good game. I can't remember the rest off my top of my head. I know Todd Gurley scored a touchdown last week, but running backs have had good games versus them, so I'm not really scared of it. And last season, they were absolutely awful versus running backs. So I think Chris Carson gets 20 to 25 touches in this matchup. Hopefully falls into the end zone maybe once or twice. Should get a couple catches. I think he's going to be a fantastic play this week. 7K. Don't mind putting him in. So I like the start to this lineup. So Deshaun Watson, he's got 40-plus point upside in this matchup. Honestly, and I'm not saying I'm expecting that, but I think he gets you over 20 fantasy points, hopefully in the 20 to 30 point range. Leonard Fournette, whole bunch of touches, 30-plus potential there. Chris Carson, probably going to get you 20 to 25 touches. I love that start. It gives us a nice floor and a nice high ceiling. So next I want to plug in. So I originally wasn't going to use Hopkins because I was going to use Kenny Stills, but just looking at ownership projections, well, I shouldn't say I wasn't going to use Hopkins. I was kind of more leaning on Hopkins and GPPs just because of how expensive he is, because I prioritize running backs in cash games. But I got my 2 stud running backs in, and then I like another cheaper running back this week. So I can actually afford DeAndre Hopkins, I think, if I want to punt a tight end. Now, that's the question this week. Do I want to absolutely punt tight end? Maybe. I kind of like DeAndre Hopkins. I love DeAndre Hopkins this week, and I kind of like the idea of just spinning up a receiver and then punting the tight end position because there's 2 value options that did open up. So let's talk about Hopkins. He's at 8,100, and I think he's got possibly the highest ceiling on the slate for skilled position. It's close. I think he's going to smash. Now, he's very expensive, but I obviously love Deshaun Watson, so I want to get his pass catchers in. And I know this is a cash lineup, so we don't like to stack. And I'm also going to put Kenny Stills in the lineup, which is kind of scary. But I don't see a way that the Texans don't smash the Raiders. I think they're going to throw all over them. And the cool thing is they play at 425, so they're kind of like your late night hammer. So if you are a little bit behind, or if you're doing good still in cash games and you got this onslaught, you're going to be good. You're going to be looking pretty good. But yeah, Hopkins, he's got a massive 29% target share, which is second in the NFL, only behind Michael Thomas's super high target share. And also, if you want to absolutely use all the Texans in cash games, you can use Michael Thomas too at 8K. I have no problem with that. But anyway, back to this matchup. Oakland just got abused by Rodgers. Already said that. His horrible group of wide receivers right now. Devontae Adams is not playing, and he's still just absolutely shredded them. Oakland's 26th DVOA versus the pass. They're allowing 43 points per game to wide receivers, which is 6th most in the NFL. And DeAndre Hopkins owns one of the highest wide receiver versus cornerback matchups of the week on PFF, which, obviously he always pretty much does. And they lost Will Fuller, so they're going to have to look to lean on Hopkins even more, and he's coming in on good form. They actually finally broke out of that mini slump he was in since week 1, and he scored 28 points, had 12 targets, 9 catches, and actually he had the similar targets and receptions the past 2 weeks, but 106 yards last week and a touchdown, good for 28 fantasy points. Would not surprise me if we see 15 targets, maybe 12 catches, 2 touchdowns out of DeAndre Hopkins, and he gets close to 40 points in this matchup. I think he's just in a smash spot. He's going to be very high owned despite this price tag, so I feel like I have to jam him in. But also, I don't mind if you want to go with Michael Thomas instead, because Michael Thomas has been just absolutely consistent this season, even more consistent than DeAndre Hopkins, because we know DeAndre Hopkins was on that little slump. But I don't care about the matchup. I know he's going up against Patrick Peterson, but I don't care. Is Drew Brees going to be back? I don't know. But again, I really don't care. He's been just fine without Drew Brees. And if you look at Thomas's numbers this season, you've never been mad about playing Michael Thomas. Never. Maybe you're a little bit mad about the price tag, but maybe like week 6 versus Jacksonville when he was 7,800, only got 16, but still, he's been fine. He's never absolutely sunk your lineups. 25, 18, 16, 18, 44, 16, 25. I think he's a fantastic play. If you want to use him instead of Hopkins so you're not using all these Texans, I understand that because I want to play Kenny Stills next, and that's 2 receivers and a quarterback on the same team in cash games, which might sound a little scary if the stack sucks, but I don't think it's going to suck. But again, so you can play Michael Thomas, you can play DeAndre Hopkins. I like both, but for this case, we're going to use DeAndre Hopkins. And as for the next wide receiver spot, I like Kenny Stills quite a bit because, Will Fuller is out, so this is going to open up some value in this passing game here. And Kenny Stills is at 4,700, and I think he's a really good play this week. He played 94% of the snaps last week, and, Kiki Cutie was in the slot about 69% of the time. And Stills went over for 100 yards last week on 5 targets, 4 catches, got 17 fantasy points, and he's a deep ball guy, so he can get the deep bomb. He can definitely do that versus Oakland. This is a very beatable matchup for him, and I think he's just a fantastic play. So Kenny Stills, I think he's possibly going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. Him or Hopkins, I think. I think a lot of people are going to play both and Deshaun Watson, so that's why I'm not too scared about stacking a little bit in cash games this week because I think a lot of people are going to do it. And in cash games, I just want to eat the chalk. I'm not trying to get cute and get different. So Kenny Stills, he makes a ton of sense for me. 4,700, he's going to be very popular. So this was the easy part, in my opinion. After this, it gets kind of hard because I don't know where I want to go. I like a lot of guys. I like John Brown. I'm going to tell you right now, I can't afford John Brown at this point. We only have 3,800 salary remaining. But I don't know. I like D.D. Westbrook. I don't know if he's going to play, though. And then, it's kind of like a hard spot after this. But Courtland Sutton. So Emmanuel Sanders is gone. Now, I'm not really saying that's going to make a huge difference for Courtland Sutton. It might just actually get more attention for him. But at only 5,300, I think I got him projected for about like 13 to 15 points, and that makes him one of the better values on the slate, in my opinion. And the Colts have really struggled versus wide receiver ones this season. They've actually been one of the. I read something from Scott Barrett on PFF, how bad they've been versus wide receiver ones this season. I believe they're like 3rd worst in the NFL versus them. And Courtland Sutton, he's pretty much the only wide receiver left on this team, him and Deshaun Hamilton. So Sutton, I think he's going to be fine. He should get you double-digit points. He's done it almost every single week this season, I believe, besides one versus Chicago, which is a tough matchup. Other than that, 22, 13. Look, even Sutton got 22 versus Oakland, so DeAndre Hopkins, he should smash. But anyway, 13 versus Green Bay, 24 versus Jacksonville, 19, 11, 14. He's been safe. You've never really been mad about playing Courtland Sutton because it's not like he's over the moon expensive. So at this price tag, 5,300, he's the only wide receiver on this team. It's a good matchup versus Indy. And actually, these teams play at some pretty high paces. So I think he's gonna be fine. You guys saw how bad Joe Flacco was on Thursday night last week, and Sutton was still okay. 8 targets, 6 catches, 14 points. Now it's probably Joe Flacco's worst game I've ever seen in my life. So Courtland Sutton should be fine. We're in a dome. I expect Denver to be trailing in this game. They're gonna have to throw the ball. Indy's secondary is not that great. They are allowing 39 fantasy points per game to wide receivers, which is, I believe, top 10 in terms of giving up points. So it's a pretty good matchup for Courtland Sutton. I do expect him to have some ownership, but 5,300, I like it. He's got a safe floor, and I think he's got a high ceiling as well. And he was already demanding one of the highest target shares in the league. Not like one of the top 5 highest, but pretty high for Courtland Sutton. I think he should probably get around a 30% target share in this offense now. Yeah, I know it's not like an exciting offense or anything, but Courtland Sutton is talented. So 5,300, I don't mind it. So now at this point, I want to go to my flex spot, and let's talk about Ty Johnson, who I think's probably going to be pretty popular this week. He's only 4,900, but he's going to be the starting running back for the Lions this week. So let's talk about him. So Carry-On, he got placed on the IR, which means full steam ahead for Ty as value play this week. J.D. McKissick does exist, and I believe Paul Perkins got caught up, but this is going to be Ty Johnson's backfield more than likely. He saw 64% of the snaps when Carry-On Johnson went out last week, so he's the clear lead back here. And he was also involved in the passing game too. He had 4 targets, so he's not just his only role is not on the ground. He will be using the passing game a little bit. Now, he was pretty awful last week, 10 carries for 29 yards, and he got 9.7 fantasy points because of the 4 catches for 28 yards. But this is a very good matchup versus the New York Giants. They're allowing 28.9 points per game to running backs, which is I believe it's top 7 in the league. Let me check that real quick. Yeah, I believe it's 7th most in the NFL. They're allowing 115 rushing yards per game and 1 touchdown per game to running backs. Ty Johnson, if he's going to get me 10 to 20 he's probably getting more than 10. 15 to 20 touches against the Giants here. And the Lions actually have one of the higher implied team totals of the slate. I believe it's like at 28 or 29 right now, which is kind of surprising for the Lions. So Ty Johnson, I think he gets into the end zone, and I think he's going to have a pretty good day. It's going to be hard for him to not hit value here. He's got anywhere from like 12 to 20 some touch plus upside here, so I would take that at 4,900. I think he's going to be pretty popular, so I like plugging him in. And I have 3 running backs that are going to get high volume here, so I do like this is a pretty good cash game lineup build just from the roster construction point of view. So Deshaun Watson, obviously I like him this week. Leonard Fournette, Chris Carson, bell cow running backs. DeAndre Hopkins, arguably the best wide receiver in football. He's going to get a ton of volume here. Kenny Stills, he's just a little bit too cheap. It's a plus matchup. He's filling in for a guy that got injured. He's still a little bit too cheap. He's got upside, so I do like that. It's not like he's going to be like a high volume guy, but he'll be fine. Cortland Sutton, he's a high volume guy. He's the only wide receiver on that team pretty much. Don't really count Deshaun Hamilton as too much of a factor there. It's a great matchup. Sutton, he's shown upside this season, so he makes sense. And Ty Johnson, he's going to get high volume too, and he's only 4,900. So I like this lineup right now. There really isn't anyone risky. Like, you're not worrying about anyone getting on the field, hopefully getting a couple targets. So I feel pretty safe. So at this point is where it gets a little tricky. So at tight end, as you can see, I have 25.50 left. And I'm telling you right now, I cannot fin Darren Waller. That'd be great if I could, but I absolutely can't. And I'm seeing a lot of high ownership on Darren Waller this week, and I don't know where you guys are getting Darren Waller if you're not... I mean, I guess you're probably not playing DeAndre Hopkins, and you're playing Darren Waller instead, but I'm prioritizing DeAndre Hopkins more than I am Darren Waller. So at this point, I have to punt tight end, and there's actually a couple punt tight ends that became available today. So OJ Howard got ruled out, and I know these tight ends are ugly, but understand we have a lot of better options on our lineup right now, so we have to sacrifice somewhere, and I actually think there's upside in these matchups. So I actually like Jonnu Smith at 2,800, and then I like Cameron Brate at 2,700. So I want to talk about Jonnu Smith first. So he's actually a pretty decent pass catcher. And I remember last year I guess I have a soft spot for Jonnu Smith because it was on the Texans. I want to say it was either Thursday night or Monday night. And I actually bet him to score the first touchdown because I believe Delaney Walker was out with an injury. And it was like plus 1,700. And he actually scored like a 70-yard touchdown. I don't know if you guys remember that. I can't remember if it was like a Thursday night or a Monday night. But it was pretty darn awesome. So I guess I have a soft spot for Jonnu Smith. But he's pretty athletic. I mean, he's not like a stiff board or anything. Last week he had 3 targets, 3 catches for 64 yards. I actually had some interest in Delaney Walker heading into the week. I wasn't sure if he's going to play or not. I guess, well, obviously he's out now. So Jonnu Smith at 2,800. I have to like that. He had 9 points last week, and he's going up against going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who suck versus tight end. They are giving up 19.1 points per game to tight ends this season, which is second worst in the NFL, and they've pretty much given up bad games. They've pretty much given up good games to tight ends every single week. Even Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett had pretty good games versus them. So I think this is a pretty good play at 2,800. If you're going to give me, I think he gets anywhere from like 3 to 6 targets. If you give me like 60 yards with that, even if he does what he did last week, 9.4 points, I will take that all day at 2,800 because he's gonna be guys like Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette, those kind of guys. So Jonnu Smith, I think he's a fine punt play. It's a great matchup. I do have interest in Ryan Tannehill this week, and the thing with the Tampa Bay defense is it's a pass funnel defense. They are elite versus the run. One of the best teams in the NFL versus running backs. I think Derrick Henry's going to get stuffed. Ryan Tannehill's going to throw the ball. This is a very beatable matchup for Jonnu Smith. So 2,800, I don't mind him. And with Cameron Brate, I hate Jameis Winston, and I hate that Bruce Arians does not use the tight end spot. So I think he's a little bit riskier, but Jameis Winston seems to love Cameron Brate, and I don't mind him either at 2,700. Tennessee's actually been pretty bad versus tight ends too, if I can find them. They're giving up, 14 fantasy points per game to tight ends, which is, it's bottom half in the league. So I think it's a beatable matchup. And I don't know, Cameron Brate, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets into the end zone. Jameis Winston seems to look at him there. He had 4 targets last week, 1 target, 3 target, 2 targets, 2. They don't really value the tight end position too much in the Bruce Arians offense. But if you give him some of OJ Howard's targets, I think he gets anywhere from 3 to 6 targets in this matchup. And it's pretty good at 2,700. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets into the end zone. But I actually do prefer Jonnu Smith a little bit more just because I think there's more upside there. And I have interest in Ryan Tannehill, so it would make sense to pair them up. But Cameron Brate's also a decent punt option as well. Don't expect much, but just know that we are getting other guys in, like DeAndre Hopkins, Kenny Stills, Cortland Sutton, those kind of guys. Because if we played chalky Darren Waller, which I have no problem with Darren Waller. I think he's a fantastic play this week, or even Austin Hooper. we're probably gonna have to bump Hopkins down all the way down to someone like John Brown, and well, we can't even do that. So anyway, let's stick with the regular build as of right now because I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's plug in Jonnu Smith. I know it feels gross, but I don't hate it. Then the defense, we have 2,300 left, and it's just really plug and play here. I'm glad we have 2,300 left because I actually do like the Chargers defense going up against the Chicago Bears. It's a Mitch Trubisky-led offense. I don't trust him. I mean, I trust him to turn the ball over. I don't trust him as a quarterback. And I think we get some turnovers here, hopefully get some sacks. So don't mind the Chargers defense. And this is one of the lower Vegas totals on the slate, I believe. What's the total? It's a 40.5 total, which is actually lowest on the slate. Now the Chargers are 5.5-point dogs, but still, that's not a lot of points going against them. I think they'll be fine. Hopefully, they can cause a turnover. Maybe get a strip sack for a touchdown. Maybe a pick six from Mitch Trubisky. I don't think that's out of the question. So as of right now, this could be an initial cash build. Now we have a lot of high floor guys here and a lot of high ceilings. So we got Deshaun Watson, relatively high floor, high ceiling as well. Fournette, Carson, bell cow running backs. High floors, high ceilings. DeAndre Hopkins, amazingly high ceiling. Somewhat of a lower floor this season. But with Will Fuller out, I think DeAndre Hopkins got a really safe floor, and he's got 30-plus point upside in this matchup. I think he smashes. Kenny Stills is a little bit too cheap. He's going to be very chalky. Cortland Sutton, Emmanuel Sanders is gone. He's the only guy there pretty much. Colts suck versus wide receiver ones. He makes a lot of sense. Jonnu Smith is our punt, so this is our risky guy, but at 2,800, there's not a lot of risk. He doesn't need to do much. I think he pays off his salary. Ty Johnson, filling in for Kerryon Johnson, so pretty much a bell cow roll. It's not going to be like Fournette or Carson, but he's still going to get a lot of touches relatively to his price tag, and it's a good matchup. The Chargers defense going up against a bad offense. So I like this. Now, if we want to make a pivot, I actually do like Ryan Tannehill this week because he's very cheap. So if you want to punt at quarterback, you can plug in Ryan Tannehill. We have 2,000 salary remaining. So we could upgrade our tight end. We could. Or we could upgrade Ty Johnson. Or we could upgrade our defense. Now, actually, we could afford the Patriots defense, but I'm a Browns fan, so I'm not going to do it. I don't care if that's biased or anything. I'm not doing it. But it's a smart play. I'm not saying you can't do it. Just me personally, I'll live with it if the Patriots defense smashes. I don't expect a lot of people to play them anyway because of how expensive they are. Now, if it was a showdown slate, on the other hand, it might be a little bit different. But as a Browns fan, I'm not doing it. So let's plug the Chargers back in. And at the flex spot, we got 2,000 salary remaining. And I know someone that's 6,900 that I like a lot this week. And that would be Le'Veon Bell at 6,900. And again, like I said with Chris Carson and Leonard Fournette, we're getting a ton of volume here. And he's averaging 22.8 touches per game. Let me just make sure. Okay. So he's averaging 22.8 touches per game, which is 7th most in the NFL. He dominates the snaps, and he's game script proof, just like Leonard Fournette is. I know they're playing in the same game, and I really don't love playing running backs in the same game because usually one of them is, worst play because the team's trailing or whatnot. But Le'Veon Bell, he's involved in the passing game, so I think it's gonna be fine. And he owns a 20% target share, which is tied for second, only behind Christian McCaffrey. And I will say he has not been efficient this season, but he looked pretty good last game. He actually averaged 4.7 yards per carry, which is best, and it was actually versus New England, which is the best defense in the NFL. So I mean, that was encouraging to see. He actually had some runs he made some pretty good moves and it looked pretty good. But this is a great matchup versus Jacksonville. They are 32nd DVOA versus the run, which is dead last, and they're allowing 25.1 points per game to running backs. So Le'Veon Bell, I think he makes some sense too. So, but this lineup, I don't hate it. Ryan Tannehill going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a fantastic matchup for Ryan Tannehill, and he actually is coming off a really good game where he had over 300 yards, he had 23 fantasy points, threw 2 touchdowns, had a pick, but he looked pretty good, 23 for 29, and this is a much worse defense than the Chargers. I know the Chargers defense hasn't been a leader or anything this season, but Tampa Bay, like I said, it's a pass funnel defense. They absolutely suck versus the pass, and they're great versus the run. And I think Derrick Henry struggles. I think they're going to throw the ball. If Ryan Tannehill gets 30-plus passing attempts here, I think he's going to be fine. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are giving up 24.1 points per game to quarterbacks, which is sixth most in the NFL. And Tannehill didn't look too bad last week. I'm not saying he's a great quarterback or anything, but I think he's going to be fine at 5,100. So if you want to go this route, Ryan Tannehill is fine. He does not have the ceiling that Deshaun Watson has this week, but I think he's going to be okay. And then we get Le'Veon Bell, who might be an upgrade of Ty Johnson. We don't know what Ty Johnson's going to do. We're projecting him to be like a 15 to 20 touch back, but we don't totally know what they're going to do with the backfield. And I trust Le'Veon Bell more than I trust Ty Johnson. I do like the price of Ty Johnson more, but I think Le'Veon Bell comes in at a good price too. So in this one, we get 3 stud running backs: Fournette, Carson, Le'Veon Bell, and then we just have to drop our quarterback to Ryan Tannehill. But anyway, that's going to be it for the lineup builds. If this was helpful, remember to leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it. This is one of my more fun videos of the week. I really enjoy doing the lineup construction videos because I think it's probably the most helpful video. So anyway, if you guys have not seen my core plays video, I love making that video too. So check that out. I posted it on Tuesday. Posted my favorite GPP stacks yesterday. And I think that's it. So that's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I wish you guys the best of luck on Sunday.